There are two terrible ways that self-centered parents can wound you in the way that you have relationships, and in particular, when they didn't take an interest or support the unique little person that you were, and they didn't help you to learn to detect and say no to mistreatment. And if this has happened to you, you may find yourself struggling to have friends, and when you do get a friend, you'll tolerate terrible treatment from them and end up believing it's your job to hide that it hurts you. Have you done that? In fact, it can prevent you from seeing that this is a bad person and you need to get away. But your trauma will tell you the problem is you. My letter today is from a woman I'll call Renette, and she writes, "Hello, crappy childhood fairy. I was wondering if you could give me advice on how to deal with guilt and shame over the end of a friendship." She says, "I met Ethan through a mutual friend and we hit it off. He was interesting, kind, and artistic, and we became good friends during the pandemic, talking over the phone at least once a week." I've got my fairy pencil so I can circle things I want to come back to, like the pandemic. Didn't all kinds of crazy things get kind of grooved into our habits back then? Okay. When restrictions began to be lifted, I visited him several times, even stayed with his family at their lake house. I was really happy to have such a welcoming friend and to be included in family activities, since I don't have a close family of my own. After about a year and a half of being good friends, Ethan started to grow more distant. I remember saying, "I think our friendship is sort of fading," which he didn't really respond to. He would stop returning my calls and not answer my texts, or he did so sporadically. It was a huge change from the past. He would always call me back or text me or just answer. It was sad for me to see that my friendship was drifting apart, but I decided to just stop reaching out to him and give him space, okay? However, he continued to reach out to me, and when we did talk, he would be passive-aggressive, telling me that the things I talked about were annoying and telling me to stop talking about certain things. This is so weird. I just don't get where he's coming from. The original mutual friend who had introduced us became a source of annoyance to him, and he would say horrible things about her to me. It was extremely uncomfortable to speak to him, and I felt pretty nervous talking to him. It seemed obvious to me that he didn't like me, but for some reason he kept talking to me. In hindsight, I see that he probably kept talking to me because I'm an easygoing person who, unfortunately, has been a doormat most of my life. I see that I always accepted whatever he said with an open hand, even when the things he said hurt my feelings or made me uncomfortable. I see that I should have set a boundary with him, but I did not because I did not want to let a friend go. And I also think I have trouble feeling how angry I am. So it's getting hard for me to set boundaries because it's hard for me to tell when I'm getting upset. Interesting. So used to shutting it down, maybe. One day he texted me, and when I responded, he told me I was being lazy in the way I texted him. Oy vey, huh? And with that, I got up the courage to ask him if he was mad at me and what was going on. I thought you were going to say you had the courage to confront him or to leave, but you say the courageous thing was just to ask him if he was mad at you. You sound like you must have been very afraid of these scenarios. Okay. He seemed surprised by this and assured me that he loved me and that everything was fine. And we talked on the phone again about a week later, and he seemed honestly back to normal. I was really excited to have my friend back and proud of myself that I had been assertive in the way I asked about his behavior. I beg to differ. I don't think asking about the behavior is assertive. Doing something about it is. Okay. He invited me to come and stay with him for his birthday, and I was excited because I thought we were going back to being normal. However, through the night of hanging out, which I was totally sober for, he again started to treat me in the same way, shutting down what I was talking about or saying certain things I said were stupid. I was trying to think of ways to engage him, and when we went to a bar later, he started to completely ignore me. I started just talking to someone else at the bar, sort of bewildered as to what to do. Ethan moved over to another table entirely and began speaking to other people. When it was getting late, I went over to talk to him about what we were doing next, and he wouldn't even look me in the face. Finally, all the frustration and hurt I had with him just came pouring out. Yay! And I started screaming in his face, asking him, why was he treating me so badly? Again, asking is not a boundary, but okay, you asked. Why? And I want to know too, why? The bartender told me to stop yelling, and some customers told me I shouldn't be talking to him like that. Ethan and I left, and I just drove home. I've been there, okay. The next day, I texted him an apology and also found the bar on Facebook and apologized to them as well. I saw on my social media that he had blocked me, so I hoped that he had seen my text apology, seeing as he probably blocked my phone number as well. This is where you did the codependent flip thing. I don't know if it's codependence, but a shutdown flip. You flipped. And all of a sudden your mind says, oh, this is me. I'm the one who has to apologize. And I agree, screaming, definitely apologize to the bar. I love you for doing that. That's so responsible. But your friend had it coming. He had it coming. What he was doing is so terrible. I can't even guess, like, what's wrong? Is he got a mental illness? Is he totally high on something ugly? I don't know. Okay, so you apologize. My problem now is I feel so much guilt and shame for yelling at him. I knew you'd say that. This is a pattern. This is a pattern, especially in people whose needs were not met when they were a kid. I see that he was not being nice to me. It's more than not being nice. It's more than not being nice. He was mind effing you, for sure, and just abandoning you as a friend after manipulating you to keep hanging out in the friendship. But I also know that it's not an excuse to yell at someone. Okay, I'm just going to say an unpopular opinion here. There are some things that are an excuse to yell at people. And it's better that you should express your anger about a wrongdoing than stuff it down and keep teaching yourself to gaslight yourself that it's okay and it's just your fault. Sometimes recovery looks messy like this. We yell. We express ourselves. We have a fit in front of everyone. And it's okay. You apologize to the bar. What happened in the bar is nothing compared to what this guy has done to you, okay? Since he never accepted my apology, even though the bar did reach back out and say, thank you, I'm having trouble moving on from this. No, that's not why. If he accepted your apology, you would still have trouble moving on. The lack of an acceptance of the apology is nothing any of us ever needs. You apologized, you did your bit. He doesn't want to have contact with you is what's going on. He blocked you. There was something going on with him that he was clinging to you, and then he was really resentful that you were around. I don't think it had anything to do with you. If you really want to, just do some self-examination. Was there anything did you have covert feelings of romance for him that you wouldn't cop to? Was that going on? That could make a person uncomfortable. Were you having expectations of him or a tit for tat that you thought if you were really nice to him, he should be really nice to you? That can make a person uncomfortable. But whatever you did, just being yourself, what he gave back to you was crap. This is not a good friend for you. You already did more than enough by apologizing. You asked me my opinion. That's what I think. You're having trouble moving on because you have unprocessed trauma. And the shame and the feeling of pressure and the fear there's someone out there in the world that I've hurt and who probably hates me. You know what? On behalf of all of us, and in the comments, people will join me, let him hate you. Let him run away screaming and never come back. He's a jerk. So let him hate you. You actually don't need him or anybody to like you and think that you're actually good after acting that way. I know how painful it is to be treated badly for mystery reasons. I've had it happen in several instances in my life, and it was really hard for me to get through. So here's what worked. Here's what worked for me. I got a life. And it sounds like you're kind of lonely, that you're even holding on to a friendship that's not very fun. Used to be, but isn't. And you need a life. You need joy in your life and friends and people who love you as you are and who get you and who enjoy the same things and who can be trusted if you go to a bar or meet their family or whatever you do, that who they are when you're together is who they were when they said that they would like to get together and not have this huge personality flip. That's emotional abuse. And unless we find out he has some sort of grave mental illness, that's emotional abuse. So everyone in the comments, if you have experience with such a person, tell us about it. This is baffling me. What do you think it is? And a whole bunch of people, they're automatically going to go to narcissism. I don't know. I'd like to hear insight about this. If you've dealt with somebody, did you find out what was going on? So as always, we are kind and supportive to our letter writers. They've asked us for our help. When you're finding new friends, a lot of people who had trauma in the past struggle with this a little bit. There's just kind of a built-in feeling of weirdness about connecting with people. Like it feels sometimes like we just don't know what's going on, or why does everybody else seem so friendly? Why do I feel left out? You sound to me like somebody who has that symptom. So one of the things we can do to strengthen our ability to make friends is to learn friendship skills. And it's very practical. You know me, I like practical tips, and I give away free PDFs with practical tips. So how to have stronger friendship skills. Emotional neglect in childhood means, among other things, that your parents may not have helped you develop a sense of self. They didn't get who you were, and they didn't validate you. And I notice in the hundreds of letters I get a pattern where the hunger for recognition and validation turns into the very thing that makes you feel separate from other people, as if there's a wall around you and you can't get out. My letter today is from a woman I'll call Simone, and she writes, "Dear Anna, I'm 47, I'm a singer and fiction writer getting some acclaim in both fields by now, even though I started both music and writing relatively late. All right, I've got the fairy pencil, I'm gonna circle what she's telling me, and we'll come back. I'll circle what I wanna come back to in a second reading, but let's go through and see what Simone's got going on. She says, I come from an Eastern European country where I grew up with a father who felt quite distant, an over-controlling mother who rejected me quite a lot, and a sister 8 years older. I was a cheeky little girl who wanted to sing to everybody, and this annoyed the heck out of my sister. This led to her hating me and secretly bullying me when we were alone at home during the summer months. My mother often didn't give credit to my words or got upset with me too quickly. As a child, I didn't realize it was all just a reaction to some other things possibly going on in her life. This went on until I moved out and got married, but all through my childhood and into my early years as an adult, whenever I overwatered a houseplant or felt too shy to translate the English tour guide's words to the rest of the family on a family holiday, she turned away from me, being a person who hates not being in control. She abused me verbally and shouted at me. For hours, she would ignore me while I cried my heart out, feeling totally confused in a foreign country. I can still recall the way she clenched her teeth at me and how scary that was whenever I did something that angered her. I find it hard to put these things behind me, even though now she tries her best to attend my concerts and book signings. Her general attitude hasn't changed. All of this led to my shyness and passiveness while being around other creative people, even as an adult. I would love to fit in with people I consider my crowd, but it's hard. It's the same when I do regular office jobs too. I see people giggling together, getting annoyed with each other, and then making peace, doing normal things that I'm not a part of. For example, the following thing happened at a recent stage rehearsal where I worked with some dancer friends. I looked at my phone and saw that my book got reviewed by a star critic. I opened the link and read the article. He loved my collection of short stories. This meant the world to me, so I wanted to share it with the others. When I did, the project leader and another lady started clapping frantically. The leader then asked me to say in a few words what was in the article. As soon as I started talking, her attention was drawn by someone else, who right away began to chat with the person next to her. So I quickly finished my sentence and stopped talking. Not that I wanted to be the center of attention too long. Even the frantic clapping bothered me. I just wanted to be heard, and yet I had to face that my news wasn't interesting. They didn't even listen out of courtesy. Even as I write this, I feel like crying. I even feel childish. The way I see it is, other people can speak up any time, sharing something funny or great, and the group gives a unanimous cheer. It doesn't happen to me. Am I too weird? I keep feeling this glass wall around me. Do I try to break through? Yes. I do cheer with the others. I do listen to them, even ask questions, but they don't reciprocate my interest. My parents were never violent to me, but I know that their attitude toward me was a kind of abandonment by itself. And I did grow up being slapped, spanked every now and then by them or my sister. Am I too sensitive? I really want to leave these issues behind and feel like an appreciated member of the groups that I'm part of, but the glass wall is real. All right, thanks for reading, she says, and that is Simone. Okay, Simone, I really feel for you. I feel like I've been in your shoes, and that's really hard, and I'm really sorry, and congratulations on your huge accomplishments. That's a big deal. I can appreciate that too. So you're 47, singer and fiction writer, two totally separate spheres, right? And you're getting some acclaim in both fields, so good for you. Good for you. And your childhood was this funky thing with these Eastern European parents, but you moved to some other country and your mother was over-controlling and your father was distant, kind of a not infrequent combination of parents that people here with CPTSD have, and this older sister who was a bully. Now I noticed something in your language where you said that you were a little kid who wanted to sing all the time, which is lovely. This led to her hating you. I don't think that's what led to her. I kind of want to help you like detach from your story. And I know like this stuff really happened. I know it did. But right now, for you to get free of it, you're going to have to stop being so identified with it. You've had a chance to talk about it, I hope, if you've gone to therapy, seen how far you can go with that. You're telling us here, and I'm reading this here, like tens of thousands of people are going to hear your story about what happened here. So we hear you, Simone, and everybody in the comments, let her know that we hear her accomplishment, and we feel the pain of this situation. But I'm telling you that your sister being a bully was going to happen regardless of your singing talent. So I think there's this little equation that it's like, too bad you have this like creative little bird inside of you because gets you bullied. And that's not the equation. It's you got bullied because your sister's a bully, because your parents maybe couldn't be effectively parent her on that. They couldn't effectively protect you from that. Even the best parents end up with chaos. I just want to validate that. They end up with difficult children. Your sister sounds like a difficult kid. So your mom didn't believe you. She got upset too quickly. All right, your mom sounds to me like something's wrong. And I'm not trying to excuse her weaknesses in parenting, but I'll just say, I see a pattern there. She sounds quite depressed and frustrated at the very least. And, if your dad was distant, it sounds like she was lashing out at you guys all the time. I just see the pattern that you overwatered a houseplant and felt too shy, and I'm just imagining that she had this, why can't everything just get easier for me energy? So again, that doesn't excuse the weak parenting and the unkindness that she gave to you and the lack of attention. But it is sometimes a reason. It's not you. You did not cause it. You didn't cause it, all right? Something that I actually would give her props for is that she tries her best to attend your concerts and book signings. That's pretty unusual. That's a nice thing. And if you still have a relationship with her, I would just say thank her for that. That's nice. Her general attitude hasn't changed because whatever, she's ground down. She's been ground down and she is unlikely to change, but you never know. You never know, like as you begin to change, sometimes the most helpful thing that we can do for other people who are stuck is to heal ourselves. Our whole demeanor changes. Our nervous system gives off different signals. It sometimes can be very healing for other people just to be around us. Other times, maybe most of the time, it doesn't change anything. They're going to be them, we're going to be us. And this is the message I want to come back to you, Simone, is who you are is not defined by her or how much she validates you or how much anybody validates you. The worth of you and the work you do, you're going to get so much of this validation as you did with the book review and invalidation as you did from the dancers. And a little bit I'm like, that saying where don't go to the hardware store for milk, don't go to the dancers for appreciation about the book review. Now, if you had been with a group of writers in that moment, they would have been like, you're kidding, you got a review from that person? That's amazing. But I'll tell you what, then some of them would have gotten jealous and distanced you. People are people, so your validation has to come from your own sense of inner power, your own mission, your own guiding light inside about what you're trying to do. When you really can bring that in and make your life about where you are trying to go and the good that you are trying to bring to the world, everything will shift around you. You watch. The validation ends up showing up because there's something authentic and real and generous about what you're doing. And there are people out there who are going to benefit from it. When you're doing what you are meant to do, people begin to benefit. So a lot of times we're doing something we're good at, or we're doing it with this hope that we're going to get something that was missing in childhood. And I've had a lot of accomplishments of that nature too, and they ultimately are disappointing. It never turns out like, there were people who used to think I was stupid or no good, and the first time I published a book, I just thought, I showed them. Nobody read the book, not even people close to me, So when my book comes out in October 2024, I hope some of you will read it. But, honestly, the validation has got to come from here, where I really wanted to articulate my vision for what the path of healing is from complex PTSD. So that's coming from that place is where I want to tell you, it comes from within. I've heard other people, when they had to be the translator for their parents, that is a tough role. That's parentifying you. Sorry about that. Okay, so here's another spot where I saw in your language that you believe that your limitations right now are directly because of what happened. You talked about your terrible sister and your mom. You said, all of this led to my shyness and passiveness while being around other creative people. As an adult, I would love to fit in with people I consider my crowd, but it's hard. Okay, yes it is. Yes it is. But this is your homework, Simone. Forget your mom. Forget the story. You've told your story. I'm not trying to say that the story doesn't matter, but it's not going to help you make this next step. Like, you've become a writer, right? You've become a singer. You've accomplished this. Right now, your barrier, the glass wall, is your ability to connect with other people. So now is the time when the story is not about what your past was. That's not the reason for your problems. In fact, it may not even matter what the reason is of why you feel limited with people, why you feel a wall around you. Just focus on what the path forward is. The path forward is to start warming up your social skills, to start warming up your perception, to have a place to take that sorrow about the support you never got, the advantages in childhood that are never coming back, but that you can have now. Now you can have them. This is what complex PTSD healing is about. A big part of healing is learning how to have connections with people, because keep in mind that trauma in childhood can cause a neurological injury that makes it hard to connect with people. There's something going on there that's totally not your fault. No one could expect you to understand what it is, but we know it's there. A lot of people share this with you, and we make progress on it by charting out a path that we believe will work to make us better at being friends and meeting people and networking and all those things that are involved, and then sticking with it. You need good tools to do it, and you need friends who support you along the way. Not these dancer people who don't care about your book. Like, those aren't really your friends. That's something that CPTSD people do, is we friendify strangers and we parentify friends, and we're always sort of going into interactions with that big hunger of the thing we didn't get in childhood. So healing involves a certain amount of acceptance and grieving, like you didn't get it, but now you're going to have a different landscape in your life. It takes persistence. It takes courage. It takes putting one foot in front of the other. It involves learning. You can learn a lot from YouTube, books, other people, TV even, about how to do people. And you deserve to have friends along the way who get it, who listen to you. My glass wall dissolved when I started having more suitable friends for who I was, rather than trying to make do with people I didn't really fit with. And also, I got out of situations that I felt so bad about that I had to kind of cover up what was going on in my life. My life was really dysfunctional. I was trying to come off as a normie. I was trying to hang out with normie moms for the sake of my kids, which was a good goal, but I honestly did never fit in. I had a lot going on. I had a background with a lot of pain. I was in and out of the hospital. So you might have things going on that you feel like you have to compartmentalize and cover. We all do. The friends who are really good friends are the ones who you can be yourself with, who can have a laugh with you, who sympathize when something hard happens. So you can find that. I'm always encouraging people, check out 12-step fellowships, check out any kind of group activity where people are focused on healing and changing their lives, maybe releasing their creativity, maybe developing a career as you are. People who share that with you and who are there for the purpose of sharing information and mutual support. You can also do that in the membership community here at Crappy Childhood Fairy. There's a link to our member program down in the description section in every video. So you can check that out. It's a pretty economical way to have both a community and the full set of fairy tools and people you can work those tools together with. If you're like a lot of people who grew up with trauma, you feel most comfortable with friends who also had trauma. People who struggle at times with the same trauma-driven problems you've struggled with. And these people can feel like home for us until we start to heal from trauma and their actual flaws become more visible to us. Should you try to stay friends when the other person's actions are pushing you away? My letter today is from a woman I'll call Bethany, and she writes, Dear Crappy Childhood Fairy, I'm wondering if I was too judgmental of a friend and if I should try harder to repair the friendship. All right, Bethany, I've got the fairy pencil here. I'm going to go through and circle things I want to come back to on a second reading, but let's go through Bethany's letter and see what's going on. She says, I've also been going through a rough time, and I wonder if I was easily triggered and possibly took out some of my pain on her. I'm feeling the loss of the friendship, but I felt when I tried to communicate boundaries, the conversations didn't go well, and she wasn't respectful to me. I want to repair if I've done something truly hurtful to her, but I'm concerned that she doesn't respect me, and basically I would be tolerating bad treatment. Yeah, it's a really common dilemma for people with trauma. My friendship with M has a long history. We went to high school together and saw each other a lot. But in my 20s, I moved to the other side of the country and we kind of lost touch with each other for a while. I would visit occasionally and saw her a couple of times, but for the most part, we didn't talk much. She had a rough childhood. We both have a lot of trauma in our history. And I know she went through a series of toxic relationships when we were younger. So I later found out this pattern continued when we weren't really in contact. I think she was going through a very hard time, but I had perceived this as her not being super available as a friend. I didn't hold it against her at the time. I just thought she was busy. I was going through my own stuff and built a new life with new friends that was really healthy and good for me for a while. A few years ago, I went through a divorce and quickly got into a new relationship. It seemed she and I suddenly reignited our friendship at that point. She seemed actually to be very healthy at the time and very healed. Her relationship seemed like the healthiest she'd ever been in. She mentioned doing therapeutic work. It was nice to reconnect. But the next few years were rough for us. My new relationship became toxic, and I struggled a lot with various issues, including addiction, and I eventually moved back in with my parents to figure things out. But Em also was going through a lot. We talked basically every day and got very close again. I was really grateful to have her back in my life and happy we could support each other. Each of the years we've been back in contact, I visited her or managed to make time for her if I happened to be around. Basically, I've been able to visit her almost once a year. The last time I visited, I was considering moving closer to her and back to my home state, but I had hard financial limits, and she knew this. Once I was there, I kept feeling a bit like she had subtle ways of taking advantage and not respecting my financial boundaries. I noticed small things that bothered me. Her young sister invited us to a fitness class she was teaching and even sent Em the money to cover the expense. I didn't want her younger sister to pay for me and paid for the class online. I told Em I didn't want her to pay for me, but Em didn't return the money to her sister. I was surprised by her pocketing the money, but didn't say anything. It wasn't a huge deal. Yeah. But through the 2-week trip, these small dishonest behaviors really bugged me. I felt like she would subtly take advantage anytime we went shopping together, adding things into my cart that she wanted. I clearly told her I was on a budget and tried to make it clear I wasn't trying to buy her groceries. I expected to treat her to a couple meals and so forth, to spend quality time and have fun. And also, I wasn't relying heavily on her for my own food for the entire time. But I don't think it's fair for me to pay for her regular expenses like groceries. She also complained nonstop about another friend she was having issues with. This friend had stayed rent-free at Em's place for months and had truly taken advantage of her at the time. This incident had happened a couple years previous, and while I was visiting, it seemed like she was going through a friend breakup with this other friend, and she complained about this other friend nonstop to the point where I got uncomfortable and felt like she was trying to drop hints or insinuate I'm taking advantage or I'm being stingy or something. She also recently had cut ties with another longtime friend going through a divorce, but stayed friends with the ex-husband, who I found out she was attracted to and was jealous how this now former friend had managed to find such a nice guy. Her staying friends with the ex-husband she's attracted to seemed to border on straight-up betrayal. I understand cutting out friends who might not be good for you, but betraying a friend like that seemed so diabolical. I suppose maybe all her complaining about other friends got to me and honestly disgusted me. It just seemed easy for her to talk badly about people that used to be her friends. I also found myself judging her silently. We have very different lifestyles and habits. To be honest, I found her to be messy, lazy, dishonest, and selfish. I know I was being judgmental, so I had no intention of telling her my thoughts because she's allowed to be who she is, but basically these disgusted feelings were festering inside. I did try to communicate my financial boundaries, but it ended up being an awkward conversation that didn't really fix anything. When I brought up things I was upset about, she then brought up things she supposedly felt hurt by, like tit for tat. Yeah. She brought up feeling hurt that I didn't invite her to my wedding when I got married. I didn't have a wedding, and I was now divorced when she said this for the first time. I felt like she deliberately misunderstood and basically dodged what I was trying to say. I was trying to be delicate. I didn't want to come out and say, I feel like you're taking advantage of me, because that seems a bit steep. But because I was trying to be careful, she basically pretended not to understand and twisted my words. She responded by saying, no, I don't feel like you're taking advantage of me at all. She sort of turned it back around on me. Altogether, I got the feeling that she's somewhat aware that she takes advantage of people or has very transactional relationships. I noticed her do this to her boyfriend too, getting him to take out the trash or cover certain expenses even though they don't live together. I felt like she does this when she thinks she can get away with it, but she complained a lot about being taken advantage of. I saw a very manipulative side to her that I hadn't really noticed before. This wasn't apparent during all the phone conversations. This really bothered me, and I wondered if I was just being judgmental or making it a bigger deal than it needs to be. Am I? Eventually, my disgust in her sort of came out. She had a way of giving her opinion or advice on things even when not asked for. Oops. I got upset because when I shared my plans to visit my partner, she felt the need to say, I guess it's hard to let go, and gave unwelcome thoughts on my relationship when I feel like things had been going better and I was excited to see him. When I told her I don't want her advice, she really didn't take this well. I apologized for being too harsh, but she really let her anger out and almost immediately threatened to end the friendship. I got angry at that point and said I needed a break too, and basically we haven't spoken since. I don't know if I was being judgmental and ruined what was a very valuable friendship, or if the fact that I couldn't successfully communicate my boundaries is a sign that it was toxic and better to let it go anyway. We had been friends for so long, and I wonder if I should try harder to repair the friendship. Bethany. Okay, Bethany. Yeah, gosh, I relate to this. I had a lot of things like this when I was gradually getting better and recovering. And so I take this as a sign that you're shifting into greater awareness. And I hope you are, because, you know, right now you're living with your parents dealing with an addiction. What you're describing is a lot what people, of the behaviors that someone has when they have a lot of unhealed trauma and or they're in active addiction. And so I don't know if your friend is in active addiction, but it sounds like she's got unhealed trauma. Now, it's tempting sometimes to say, oh, it's just trauma. I can put up with any amount of, mistreatment and dodgy financial behavior and taking advantage. But that's not so. I just encourage you to 100% focus on your own healing. It sounds like you're starting to have attuned awareness to moral behavior, like honesty, allowing people to be themselves, being flexible like that rather than manipulative. So as your awareness comes up, it'll bother you to see this in other people. Now, I don't think it's 100% true, those little platitudes of like, anything you criticize in someone else, you need to look inside. No, some things that I criticize in other people I don't have inside, but it's worth a look. what you're telling me about when the friendship felt good, you guys were sharing sad stories all the time. So that's a certain kind of friendship. It tends to be very unstable. It's nice to have support from people, but we confuse, as traumatized people, we confuse somebody being supportive with misery-loving company, where we just go, I know, what a dog. He was awful. It was all his fault. And this complaining that she does is starting to bother you because you're gradually leaving that consciousness. Now, I use the word toxic sometimes, but sometimes it's more helpful to just focus literally on what's going on. You don't like her. You don't like her anymore. You used to, but you don't anymore. And I would be bothered too by that behavior, that thing about the money. It would bother me too, or throwing things in the cart. But that's the sort of thing, I've had friends in my life who were in active addiction, including like eating disorders or relationships and substances. And that's a lot of what it looks like, this weird kind of sneaky behavior of, kind of sneaking things under and then being like, I don't know what you're talking about. For the same sort of people, but also people with personality disorders, there's that reversal where you try to be as direct as you can be without being really cruel. And they take it and they turn it around and think that, and I just had that happen to me with somebody who was giving me unsolicited advice, exactly. And I kept saying it like 4 or 5 times, hey, this unsolicited advice is too much. And I need you to understand, my priority is this thing that you're criticizing. And they kept saying, oh, okay, so you have priorities. They just could not hear it. This is a boundary, no more unsolicited advice. And so I just couldn't continue the friendship. And it felt really bad, and I kind of suffered and struggled with that because I really liked the person. But I just realized, like, it's weird when you have CPTSD and sometimes you get fuzzy on your own boundaries. It can really jam your radar to be around somebody who's very jammed themselves, who's not really hearing things directly. The whole boundary thing, right? Your friend doesn't get boundaries. And that thing about the friendship with the husband of her friend, the ex-husband of her friend, and you saying you don't want unsolicited advice and her react, she has trouble with boundaries. And I just think people who have trouble with boundaries don't tend to make good friends. It's totally understandable how a traumatized person is like that, but we're all kind of on our own now to try to change that in ourselves. And either she's going to get on the train of trying to change that, or she's not there yet. And so what your role is just to decide, are you okay with it? This thing about being judgmental, that can be taken too far. I totally agree. We should just let people be who they are, but that doesn't mean we have to hang out with them. That doesn't mean we go grocery shopping with them. You get to have boundaries even if you accept that other people are the way they are. Not being judgmental doesn't mean you let them walk all over you. And that's a distinction that's hard to get when you were raised when your parents didn't have boundaries, when they didn't help you, like go, you can talk to your friend, and a lot of us just didn't get that training. We're figuring it out now, though, and we support each other in doing that. That's the kind of friendship I'd recommend to you, is the people where support means I'm helping you use your tools to get out of the terrible stories, the resentment. I'm supportive of you setting boundaries and helping you figure out what's an elegant way to do that. And what is a boundary? Is it when we express a preference? Like that comes, I think you said somewhere here, I tried to tell her strongly, but what a boundary really is what you won't put up with. It's like you walk out. That's what the boundary really is. You're giving somebody a heads up. There's a boundary here, and if this happens, you wouldn't be there. You don't have to go around making threats about that you're leaving or anything. But that's your boundary, is leaving. So right now, I think a lot of your confusion is you've expressed boundaries you'd like to have, but you haven't acted on them yet. And I don't think this friendship is a good one for you. I hope that you are like in some kind of group recovery for the addiction that you're in, because that's a great way to meet people who are also working on themselves and who can give you that positive support, not that like misery loves company support. I think a lot of us kind of grew up believing that when we get together with friends and we're like, I know they suck so much. And, that feels like a connection. It's a way we can get close very quickly with people, but it's toxic. It's not actually helping us as people. And like when a relationship fails, the person may have done terrible things, but the faster you can get the focus on what is it that drew me to a person who mistreated me, or why is it that I couldn't get my attention off somebody who wasn't available? Those are the healing questions that we work on. And those are the healing friends who support us in making progress on that. Sometimes close friendships fall apart. And even though you try to work on them and accommodate the other person's quirks, their behavior drives you crazy. You try talking about it, but it only leads to more fighting. You try ignoring the problem, but it only gets worse. And after a while, you can't tell if they're the unreasonable one or you are. So then what do you do? In this video, I respond to a letter from a woman I'll call Elena, and she writes, "Dear Fairy, I'm 30 years old. For almost 6 years, I was best friends with another student I met studying abroad. We moved back to the countries where we originally studied, but I visited her often wherever she lived at the moment." All right, I've got my fairy pencil. I'm going to circle things I want to come back to on a second reading, but let's see what's going on with Elena. "We kept in touch on a daily basis, supported each other in difficult life situations, and shared everything with each other, despite the geographical distance. Later, some problems in our dynamic manifested. One was the different lifestyle. I'm happily married. I've been going to therapy for 4 years, and I had a stable academic career that I recently left for a new project. Meanwhile, all of this happened. I observed my friend cheating on her romantic partners, but never taking accountability for her actions. Instead, she got angry when called out by her lovers and friends, all while feeling spiritually enlightened and superior through yoga and meditation. I also observed that it was very important to her to always be more attractive than other women, even close female friends. Obviously, even when I supported her, she could feel my disapproval or uneasiness with how she treats other people. Understandably, she distanced herself from me and shared less and less. Things got worse. Every time she traveled to Europe, where I live, she became unreliable in her planning, so that she never actually visited me, but only other people who could keep up with her sudden, 'I'm here, where are you?' Only when I visited her, it worked out. When I complained about this beforehand, because I really wanted to receive her, have her visit me, she said I gave her too much pressure. She even argued I was impatient and explosive. For context, she grew up fatherless with a very explosive mother, and she often projected that trauma onto me. So whenever I expressed I was hurt or worried, she shut down, immediately calling me aggressive. I have to add here that most people in my life perceive me as to be self-critical, and it's reflected in my communication, beating myself up and feeling constant guilt. Also, no one else ever had a problem visiting me from abroad and staying communicative during the conflict. Last time she came to Europe, she was as chaotic as always, and this time I told her that I can't accept how she's more reliable with men who casually use her for sex. With their time, she is respectful instead of being reliable with me, who is actually waiting for her and always being there. She asked me to keep quiet. "Stop it," she repeated. I then told her I can't keep up a friendship like this and that I would like to find either real closure ending the friendship or a mature conversation about our problems, not something in between. She acted as if the very clear expression of my needs was totally cryptic. That offended me the most since I know how to express myself clearly. So I told her I give up trying to be communicative and that it's on her now to tell me what can be done. Because of this, she stonewalled me without any warning or explanation. I wrote another email to her, again trying to either reflect the conflict with her or end the friendship on clear terms. Okay, so ultimatum. But she went on holidays with other friends, enjoying her life, telling me she had no other choice because we were not on good terms. She said it was her birthday week, so she had the right to have fun, and that therefore I was the problem for even mentioning the conflict. She even laughingly told me she understands why some people in the past abandoned me. But for me, a healthy friendship is a space where conflict and pain can be addressed and where criticism, in her words, judgment, is no taboo, even during a birthday or holiday week. But I know a lot of people don't allow any criticism in friendships. What do you think about that? What is friendship if not a safe space even within criticism? I'm really never allowed to comment on someone's behavior toward me while still holding their hand. Even when I doubted or seemingly ended our friendship, I would never just disappear without a word, but always keep a door open for closure or repair. And I always explained myself. But in the end, she gave me the silent treatment for 10 more months, only interrupted by uninvested, lazy answers that came out of nowhere. When I told her that stonewalling is abusive, she picked that out from my long, otherwise loving email, telling me how insulting that is, how I am the real stonewaller, and how I have no softness. In her perspective, whenever I express concerns, what actually happens is that I have anger issues and that I'm very judgmental. There is no way for her that my feelings might have reasons she could have anything to do with. She perceives herself as a very soft-spoken, calm person who never judges, and she feels superior because of that. But in fact, I was the one waiting for months, not knowing if she would ever call me back to have a reciprocal understanding. She only briefly showed up whenever she wanted, otherwise ignoring me just like that. She never felt it's a bad thing. Isn't that aggressive behavior too? She was only able to engage in a small forced conversation with me when I delivered the narcissistic supply she needed. Ooh, that's quite a label. Okay. Telling her how perfect she is. Strangely, she then accused me of the very things she herself did: stonewalling, bad communication skills, lack of accountability. Then she started gaslighting me into believing that she already said sorry, not even knowing what for. When I know for a fact she never said sorry, but only if I just accepted all of this gaslighting like a submission-beaten dog. Whoa, heavy words. She would finally feel safe with me and talk to me again. That's where I couldn't take it anymore and truly gave up. The friendship is now over. I start to believe that for her, it might have been about power, not closeness. I'd love to hear your insights on the following question. Do I have a warped sense of friendship because of my own trauma, where my parents kept avoiding healthy communication, so that nowadays I falsely assume one has to talk about conflicts at all costs? All right. Thank you, Elena. This is a quality question, and I think a lot of people here share this. And I think a lot of us have been in your shoes, and a lot of us have had friends like your friend. So I circled things I wanted to come back to. So let me first talk about your friend. She lives in the moment. She cheats on her partners. She doesn't seem to take accountability for her actions. So I guess what you're saying is she cheats but doesn't show remorse. And she feels that she's enlightened and superior through yoga and meditation. Somehow I think that might be like what you see in her, but I don't know if she's actually said, look, I'm better than everybody because I do yoga and meditation. I totally know what you're talking about, but because we want to understand what's going on here and possibly what your role in it is, I'm going to just kind of say, well, I hear a lot of your anger in this, and I don't blame you for being angry, but I'll just say where I hear it there. You're trying to say, like, matter-of-factly, she just feels superior because of what she does. And you may have seen some of my videos about how New Age myths can, like, keep you single. It is a way that people can gaslight themselves, you know, with this, it's all good, and I go with the wind, and I'm just, you know, you're too much in your head stuff. That if I'm reading between the lines, your friend is basically criticizing you for not having the same values, and then going on to say, hey, but I don't judge you. All right. There might be a little bit of that going on both sides, though. But before we talk about your part in it, which is the part that you can change, I'm just going to tell you what I observe and what you told me. So even when you supported her, she could feel my disapproval or uneasiness with how she treats other people. And so she distanced herself. And so one thing that I think might be unrealistic here is that it sounds a little bit like a lover's quarrel, and I know you're just friends, and you're married, but it sounds like you have this, it's as if you've taken a vow. In your mind, it's as if she's taken a vow to like you just as much as you like her, and to be there for you just as much as you are there for her. And she's not. She keeps just saying, look, I'm not like that. I go with the wind. I'm doing my own thing. I can't be pinned down. I can't say for certain if I'm going to visit you. And it reminds me a little bit, forgive me, it reminds me a little bit of my relationship with my mother when she was still alive. She lived in another state. She would come to my, town and to visit a friend of hers. And one time she stayed all summer and she just never made time to see me. And I'll just tell you for me, I won't project, but I'll just tell you for me, I really disapproved of what she was doing. She was drinking heavily. She was on drugs. She had this little entourage of young people who I think were drug dealers, and I was really judgmental about it. And I felt let down. My sister was having a baby that summer, and we were throwing a shower, and my mom showed up late and drunk. And so she kind of iced me out of her life, but she would never say she was doing that. So I couldn't help but wonder if, she's so deeply engaged in stuff that she knows darn well is not okay with you, that she just doesn't want to hear what you think about it, so she hides from you. She doesn't want to hear what you think about her boyfriend patterns and her lack of accountability and the woo-woo stuff she says to justify her behavior. And so I've had a lot of time. My mom's been gone for 30 years now. I've had a lot of time to think about it. And honestly, I regret being so judgmental on her. Since then, I've learned a lot about her alcoholism. Your friend, it sounds like, I don't know, maybe a sex addict or something. Trauma-driven. I can see she's trauma-driven. And she sounds very self-centered or selfish, not being considerate of your time and your plans, which is a lot like an alcoholic, actually. But I think sometimes when people are doing that, either, you had said narcissistic supply. She could be a narcissist, and which would mean she's not capable of being any other way, or she could be some kind of addict to relationships or substances, in which case, at least right now, she's not capable of being any other way. And so this is something I've learned with people who are just stuck like that. It's just like a huge waste of energy to have this vision of how they should be and how a reciprocal relationship would be, and to hold on. And we talk about this kind of romantic relationship dynamic often, of where, how many letters have I gotten from people who were quite in love with somebody, they got together and gradually realized that person was incapable of giving back anything like love, commitment, consideration, but the bond continues. And so sometimes traumatized people, and at the very end, you tip your hand that, yeah, you had had some stuff here. Your parents avoided healthy communication. So I don't know much about your childhood, but the way that you're sort of leaping to, I'm her good friend, why is she not mine? I hear in a lot of stuff she says that she's, if we, I'm going to borrow language from romantic relationships, she's just not that into you. She doesn't seem very committed to the friendship. She maybe doesn't want to let you down, or she wants to sort of keep some kind of tether on the relationship so it doesn't completely go away, but she doesn't want to look in the eyes of somebody who sees what she's doing. So that's what I see is going on. And for somebody like that, yes, your criticism, and you say, can't you criticize a friend? It's like, you can, and you have. And she has basically told you, look, I don't care that you feel that way. I'm not going to change. It's your problem. That's kind of what she's saying. And so how I see it from the outside is, yeah, that's the message for you to sit with and go, how do you want to proceed now? And I think you don't want to be friends with somebody who does that. But I also hear you continuing to hold out hope that this can be repaired. Let me just talk about some stuff that you said that I think might have triggered things a little bit, just so you can learn from this experience, and possibly one day there will be, some repair. We'll see. So it's where you judge her for thinking she's superior. So she's got her, her spirituality, her yoga and meditation, and she aspires at least to not be judgmental, and she wants to be a free spirit. And it's actually like everybody has a choice of how they want to be. And even if she's like lying to people and cheating on them, that is very unseemly, but it's not a felony. And it's really just up to you whether you want to be friends with somebody like that. You've registered your displeasure about it. And beyond that, it's up to you to decide, do you accept her? It sounds like what you're waiting for is for her to apologize to you for doing things that make you feel hurt and disappointed, and then she'll change and you can have the friendship. But I just think she's pretty much okay with herself where she is. And we know that behind the scenes, I'm sure there's a lot of pain there, but I've been in her shoes too. Sometimes, when we're doing something wrong, we just don't want people to look at us. We don't want to look at them in the eye. So when you said she grew up fatherless with a very explosive mother, that does explain it. Projected her trauma, maybe. I don't have background on why you think so. It sounds like her trauma is just playing out in her life. I certainly hear that. So whenever I expressed I was hurt or worried, she shut down, immediately calling me aggressive. And so I wasn't there, and I can't hear your tone, but I'll just tell you about something you can decide for yourself if you think it applies to you. I have this word I made up after a friend kept expressing concern for me about stuff that was actually not a problem. And it was very weird. And I made up the word concern shaming. And it was really like a backhanded way to criticize me and go, well, it was a time I was going through a hard time. It was early in my marriage, and we were having a hard time settling into, we were having power struggles and connection, struggles. Felt like he wasn't paying enough attention. He felt like I was demanding too much, and stuff that in the scheme of things is kind of a normal thing in a marriage, and certainly in the first part where you're figuring out how it all is going to work. And so I was feeling down about it, and my friend said, I'm just very concerned about you. You're always so down. And it wasn't true that I was always so down. There was nothing to be concerned about. It was just my life, and I was confiding in my friend. And I was really hurt about that. And sure enough, what soon followed is she just totally severed the relationship. And never has explained why. I think she thinks she did. She sort of said, well, I just couldn't go on. I have no idea what that was about. We had been very close. But when I look back, I would say that person was had a very weak identity. The center wasn't there. I think that I have had a pretty strong self-identity for a pretty long time. And so people more recently in my life, if they didn't have one, I think whenever we're around people who are stronger like that, there's a risk that we'll just try to be like them or get their approval or, this approval game. And I think women play this game with each other. I fit in with you. I approve of you. You're my friend. I like you. We dislike them, but we like each other. And that's a thing that it's toxic. It's normal, but it's toxic, and it always leads to like in-out games. And you guys are having an in-out game. You don't like how she lives. I thought it was interesting that she perceives you as aggressive when you expressed you were hurt or worried, and she said it was aggressive. Now, with my friend, I felt it was aggressive too, and to this day, I don't think she understands that. But I thought it was critical, and it wasn't direct or honest. Because really what she could have said is, I just don't like what you're doing. How you are right now is not okay with me. That's the truth of it. So there is a time to express concern for people if they seem to be struggling or going off the rails or getting into trouble, about to get catfished and lose all their money. It's fair to express concern to friends, but I would just say it never goes well, and especially if you haven't used the most kindest, most delicate way of putting it with them, with the least amount of information necessary to explain what the concern is. That's what I've learned about people. And the way I grew up, it was like no communication or total explosion at home. So I relate to you and your friend in that respect. I didn't know right away. So that often happened to me too, where I would be sort of just trying to creep along and not have to make too big a deal about things that I didn't like or didn't agree with. And then one day, boom, I'd flip and blow up. That's how a lot of female friendships have ended in my life, especially before I learned how to heal. And when I started healing, I think that I stopped choosing women friends who matched, and male companions who matched where I was in my healing at that point, which is not very far, not very able to be comfortable in my own skin and know what my boundaries were and be able to state them gently and not be angry when somebody couldn't deal with my boundaries. There's nothing to be angry about. It's just time to go. That's all. So we can start to have acceptance and more peace in our hearts about how people, they just don't really conform to what we want or expect. You have a choice about whether you categorize how you would like her to be as a want or as a need. And you talk about needs, but not everything is a need. I would encourage you to use that need word very sparingly, because it's a lot of pressure on a friendship to try to make them meet your needs. I would call it boundaries, just like I have preferences. I don't like to hang out with people who are dishonest with others. You don't even have to tell them that. You just have to know that for yourself. Right? When you go ahead and go, you're being dishonest. I mean, you have a long friendship, so that's fair game. But once you say it and they reject it, it doesn't make sense to keep telling them. It's really just, kind of beating a dead horse. They have the information, and if you remember how hard it is to be criticized, it comes, just even a small thing like, you'll remember it all right. And she does not have an obligation to change for you. She's not accountable to you in the kind of life she lives. So some people hearing this, that may come as shocking news, but it's true. There are some relationships where people are accountable, parent to child. Parents are definitely accountable to take care of their children well, and spouses. And then depending on the level of commitment made in a non-marriage relationship, we make promises for a reason to each other, and we're expected to keep those promises. Friends are generally a strictly voluntary arrangement, and people change and evolve. The thing about traumatized people, they can change quite a lot for the better and for the worse. So I think that's what you're seeing right now. And the friendship isn't working anymore because of the way you're growing apart. You've gone this very stable route. She's gone this rather unstable route. When you tried to express yourself clearly, you gave her an ultimatum, and she had said, stop it. She asked you to keep quiet. She didn't want to hear your ultimatum about either work this out with me or let's end the friendship. So I just want you to be aware, you get to have that ultimatum, but if you really, don't make threats you don't intend to carry out. An ultimatum is a threat. I'm going to end this friendship unless you comply with what I'm saying I need from you. And she's not doing it. So she's giving you her answer. And finding real closure, I think that closure word is pretty misleading. When you're dealing with somebody who's non-communicative or outright abusive or, doesn't want to talk to you, there is no closure. Closure is to stop having contact, to let go. You're very strong, and you can heal around that hole in your life that is left when somebody you were close to leaves. It's painful. It's called loss. But closure doesn't always require more conversation. It sounds like you guys have had conversation. I've met people where somebody abandoned them very close to a wedding they were supposed to have and never spoke to them again, and they never knew why it happened. That would be something where a person deserves closure and could ask for it, but I'd still say, oh gosh, proceed with caution. A person who would do that to you, this could be emotionally quite painful, dangerous, unstable, harsh, an invitation to get depressed. But I understand the need for information. You have information. You have talked about your conflicts with her. You're saying a healthy friendship is a space where conflict and pain can be addressed, and where criticism, or what she calls judgment, is not taboo, even during a birthday or holiday week. Yeah, in a healthy friendship, but that's not what you have. So there it is. You just don't have that. And so that's what I would encourage you, Elena, to accept is, you don't get to keep demanding that she become that kind of friend to you. She isn't that kind of friend. For whatever reason, she can't produce what you're looking for. She's not into it. She can't deal. I don't know, but the answer is no, she's not there. She's not that kind of friend. So it's good that you know what a healthy friendship is so that you can be discerning with your other friends and with new friendships that are going to form in your life. And actually getting out of a friendship that's so unhappy for you it's lonely at first, but then you know what comes? A step up. You learn something, you have some space in your life, and something better can happen. So that's really exciting. I heard you say, am I never really allowed to comment on someone's behavior toward me while still holding their hand? So what I hear is she's not asking you to hold her hand. And you're holding her hand. You want the friendship, and you want her to change. So I understand, but I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's your right, if you will. And she's given you her answer with her flippant non-answer. Yeah, so some of the things that she said to you, you could just discard what she said if you want, but it might be worth looking at in a safe way with a therapist or a friend who really does love you, or your husband. When she says that you have no softness, is that true? It could, maybe. I think softness is a lifelong skill we develop, not weakness, but basically a kind heart where we have compassion even towards people who are screwing up. I've known such people who are really extraordinary that way. I can be that way towards people I don't know, but in my life, when people let me down, it's hard for me to be soft-hearted. I get a reflex to be hard-hearted and be like, this has to be this way. So I relate to you, but I know that I am not as soft as I would like to be with people I love. Another thing you said about she thinks she's superior. So that's that part where you feel that she thinks she's superior, whether she said so or not, that's resentment. And it's okay that you feel resentful, but one thing you can do to start setting yourself free from dwelling on this and kind of churning in your mind about it is to start facing that resentment. And my tool for that is the daily practice. techniques. And that's a free course. You can always get it down in the description section below or on my website. It's free, you can learn it, but this is the most powerful thing I teach, is a way to get the anxious and angry thoughts processed. Because with trauma, we're not very good at that. We get it processed and on paper and out of our heads, and we start to have some spaciousness in here to think, what do I want to do now? Do I even want to be friends with this person? Yes, no. We have choices. And everything can work much better when we're not driven by, this tenacious resentment about things that have already happened, that we already have no solution to. And we're told, people say, just let it go. Well, how? You do it with paper. So you can check that out if you like. When you were saying she only briefly showed up, it was very telling when you said she was very, respectful of strange dude's time who she was having some hookup with. Yeah, there you go. That could be a sex addict. And then she didn't care about you. And people who are acting in a compulsive manner like that, whether it's a personality disorder or addictive behavior, who knows? You might have a better handle on that than me, and people in the comments, I'm sure, will have opinions. But I try not to do that. I try to just say, for you, it feels like BS. It's just like right in your face that she does that, and it's not acceptable to you. And so is it aggressive behavior? No, I think it's, from what you're telling me, I don't think it's aggressive. Like, her intention isn't to say, hey, screw you. Her intention is like somewhere else, and she just doesn't care. She's basically indifferent to your feelings and numb to the effect her actions have on you. Sadly, but that's what happens with traumatized people who haven't healed yet. So I hear a lot of anger here of talking about she gaslit you, narcissistic supply, gaslighting like a submissive, beaten dog, that you accepted all the gaslighting. So I hear a lot of self-attack, and that's what you said you do. People think you're very hard on yourself. Usually people who are hard on themselves are hard on other people too. So maybe she's picking that up. Overall, being hard on yourself or others is not ideal. And when we're hard on ourselves, that is resentment at self. And it's the same thing where we have this idea, I should be like this. And there's nothing wrong with having an ideal for yourself. But when it's used to just beat yourself up, it's not productive, is it? It could be counterproductive. And so the goal of healing around that, around somebody like you who is very motivated to have a good life, to get it right, to be a responsible person, to care for your friendships, to do that, then is to start releasing the fearful, resentful thinking where you think everybody should have that same ability that you have and the same goal that you have, and they just don't. Take it from me. And I used to, I've been humbled a little bit. I won't assume that's true for you, but I've been humbled. I used to think that in so many ways I had it go. I just was more accomplished or organized than other people, but time soon came and showed me. The trauma came and got me in the end, and I wasn't more accomplished or organized than other people. And I remember the slow process of just realizing that even, people who I didn't used to think had it very together at all, had it more together than me. And so in the end, that's been a softening experience. I think that's what softness is. It's humility to realize there's goodness and humanity in everybody, but that doesn't mean we have to be friends with them. We can be kind, we can be tolerant, but that doesn't mean we have to let them come stay at our house or go take vacations with them. So I hope that helps you. I don't think she wanted power. I think she wants something that is unrelated to you. That's my take on it. She doesn't want power. She's chasing love, and she's chasing a feeling of being okay and not empty. And she's sort of just like crashing over everything in her path. I've been there. And I'm grateful to all the people who didn't totally cut me out of their life forever, but they sure did for a while, and that's okay. That was fair. So I hope this is helpful to you and to many people listening to this.